Ork terrain is great for one-day builds. Something about quickly throwing together some shanty, uneven buildings is a great test for accuracy and a good way to use up scrap materials. In today's video I'll be making the most important of Ork infrastructure, the Ork Toilet, or more specifically, the Teleportaloo, for an upcoming game of Space Gits. Teleportaloo is capable of transporting drunk Gits to any location on the board, and had an official miniature during the Kickstarter, but making one of my own just looked like too much fun. I start by taking some measurements with my orcs to get an idea of scale. The measurements are then transferred to foam core, which will be the foundation of the build. I make a frame with a slight arch and cut an opening on one to work as the doorway. The pieces get hot glued together. For some extra pizzazz, I'll be using an RGB tea light that will work as the atmospheric lighting inside the sci-fi toilet. I cut a hole slightly smaller than the tea light, so the LED can shine through it, but the light itself will still be supported, and it gets glued in to be the outhouse's ceiling. The actual toilet bowl will be made from a plastic nut that is from an old toilet seat. It's friggin' meta, man. A chipboard frame is built around the bowl, and everything gets glued into the back of the crab shack, not before adding a gridded floor made from a sheet of granny grate. Next, using some plasticard and polystyrene tube, I cut up some pieces to orkify everything. Random pieces of metal welded together is basically building code when constructing anything orc related, and an orc porta potty should be no exception. I make sure to add these details now before gluing on the walls, when it will be much harder to get my hands in there. The top left of the back wall was looking a little bare. I wanted to add a vent or something. A while ago I bought this factory mold set from Green Stuff World, which is just a bunch of 28mm scale industry vent, fan, and signs that are meant to be used with resin, but since I want to build this fast, I'm going to be using green stuff instead. Grease up my hands with some olive oil, and rub some into the mold as well. A piece of green stuff is placed on top, and a scrap piece of foam core is used to press it into the mold. I did this to make a bunch of little extra details that will help bring the build to life. While I wait for the green stuff to dry, I used a piece of cereal box cardboard to build the structure's sides. With the tea light in place, the measurements of the arches is slightly off. That's okay, because I'll be covering those gaps up later. I add in some more cardboard to be inside paneling, and glue down the green stuff fan. Then hot glue the single piece of cereal box for the walls. I had to take off some foam core from the back to make the tea light removable. Next, I wanted to have a door that could open and close, so some hinges were made out of polystyrene rod. The main shaft is slipped through 3 sections of tube, which are glued to the cardboard door. This will make the door able to swing open and closed. I just had to bore out some of the foam core so that the door could completely lay flat. With the basic construction done, I just had to add some bits and pieces to make it more orc-like. The top of a pen cap kind of looked like an industrial light that might turn on when the loo is in use. And some pieces of foam insulation were cut up for roof shingles. This isn't XPS foam insulation, it's from attic rafter baffles. This is just slightly different. And the foam resembles that of a takeout container or something. I was able to score details into the foam with a pen, and the strips of shingles were glued down into the roof with wood glue. I liked the thickness of this foam and used it to make some panels for the sidewalls. The back will be its own separate removable panel, so I can have access to the tea light if I ever need to replace it. Some scrap plastic hardware was used to give the build some sci-fi elements and something to power the teleporting. I have no idea what these parts come from, but I haven't needed them, so they're fair game for kit bashing. This piece in particular looked like some sort of electric insulator, and I rammed a piece of polystyrene rod into it to make it an antenna, like a Back to the Future DeLorean or a Bill and Ted telephone booth. Some wires from a stripped USB cord were used to plug everything in. The last step of the build was to cover all the foam in a couple layers of watered down wood glue. This will protect the foam from being melted by spray paint. Now at this point, I was in the zone and I wanted to build another piece of Space Gits exclusive terrain, the vending machine. Gits can buy anything from energy drinks and ammo to health kits and head-sized cooking pots at these vending machines, as well as test their luck with the auxiliary slot machine. So just like with the Teleportaloo, a basic frame was made out of foam core, and space for another tea light was made in the bottom. Scraps and bits were used to stock the shelves with guns and grenades. Printed out some beer and soda logos, super small, and wrapped them around dowels to be cans. I also made a paper medic kit and a cardboard tube cookie pot. A template for the front of the machine was drawn on a piece of paper, then transferred to some cereal box cardboard. To make the slot machine, I pressed a dowel through the bottom of the foam core structure, and using a cardboard tube, it all gets attached to the dowel using tape to fill in the gap. I could have designed something and printed it out, but I like the jankiness of my hand-drawn numbers and fruits for the slot's face. I drilled a small hole in the end of the dowel and attached a piece of wire for the arm for the one-armed bandit. Playing with the handle makes the slot spin, and it's just an extra little thing to give this build some character. After adding in some scrap and orc textures, I could move on to painting. I start with a black base coat, then use intentionally bad cheap paint with low opacity to base everything. This gives everything a dirty, drab look, and I do that to make the miniatures stand out more, and on camera. After a staining of Nuln Oil and some dry brushing, a sheet of plastic that was from the window of a donut box was glued to the vending machine face, and both pieces of orc infrastructure are done. I think for a quick weekend build, both these terrain pieces capture the orc aesthetic and the Space Gits feel, inspiring drunken orc shenanigans. The lighting looks okay, but I think the batteries on my Toliet might be dying, so it's a good thing I made them accessible and didn't glue them directly into the terrain. Wish I added in some reflective material to the back of the vending machine to help the light reach the top shelf, but I can live with it. If you want to see how I made these orcs, or a Space Gits battle report, check out my other videos.